Hello all, my name is Florez, and I'm happy to be giving this presentation on behalf of my co-author Ghazali, which is affiliated with the SD and Berkeley in Malaysia, and I am affiliated with the Berkeley School of Construction and Project Management at University College London. So this study is titled Barriers to Implementing Solar Energy Systems in Buildings, the Resident's Perspective in Malaysia. So since 2001, the Malaysian government launched its first fuel diversification strategy to promote sustainable development in the country. The latest effort was the 11th Malaysia Plan, which was launched in 2016, and the Energy Act, along with the feed-in tariff, which are efforts to increase the use of renewable energy resources. This plan is targeted towards reducing 45% of the greenhouse gas emission and its dependency on non-renewable resources by 2030. So the government has identified a rising demand of electricity in residential areas due to the increasing household incomes, rapid electrification, and technology development. That's why it has been targeting energy solutions for residential buildings. Residential users account for almost 7.5 million of the total energy consumers. However, energy in residential areas is still mostly produced by burning non-renewable resources, such as coal and natural gas. So only about 2% of electricity in residential buildings is produced with solar energy, because these are still underdeveloped. So the government has estimated that an increase in the use of solar energy in the residential sector may reduce carbon emissions by 20% while eliminating the use of fossil fuels. So this study was basically focusing on what is preventing the residential sector from adopting energy systems, and solar energy systems most specifically. So as I show you there, this is the map of one of the islands in Malaysia, and as I show you there, the northern region. So the northern region has a vast amount of solar radiation. Also, as I mentioned to you before, the Malaysian government has been promoting the use of renewable sources for energy production, and also the residents and the residential sector have identified that they have a wide interest in adopting these systems. So we were wondering, and we wanted to respond to this question of why it has not been successful, the implementation of energy systems in the residential areas, despite the government incentives and promotion of renewable sources, the vast amount of solar radiation, and the interest from the sector. So we looked into two objectives: to gather users' perspective from the northern region of Malaysia, since it is of interest to determine what is stopping them from adopting solar energy. And the second objective is to understand the underlying reasons that prevent the use of solar energy by ranking the importance of these factors. So this is a typical solar energy system that can be installed in a residence. So residents are typically, they can be using solar panels, which is a full photovoltaic system. And basically they have solar panels in the roof. These are plugged into an inverter, and the inverter can use the solar energy to produce electricity for home and power appliances. The inverter can be also connected to a meter, and then the meter is connected to a utility service. So basically all the energy that comes into the house, it can be converted to electricity, and any extra electricity, because the residence is connected to a utility service, then the residents can sell that extra electricity and gain some money from selling that electricity. So previous studies have identified some of the barriers to implementing solar energy in Malaysia. So one of the barriers is the installation cost and sophisticated technology that is preventing residents from installing PV systems. These studies have found that 80% of respondents agree they will be interested in installing one solar energy system if the government will fund half the cost. Other studies have found that residents have limited knowledge and awareness of solar PV systems and the government programs, including advantages and long-term investment solutions. And then finally, some other studies have found that some of the barriers that could be preventing residents is the lack of suppliers to install and maintain solar PV systems. However, there have been only a few studies that have actually asked the residents directly what is preventing them from adopting these systems. We adopted a methodology to survey directly respondents from the northern region of Malaysia of what is preventing them from using these systems. So we gathered their perspectives, then we performed a ranking analysis, and with the ranking analysis we were able to determine the relative ranking of the factors. Then once we determine the most ranked factors, then we perform a factor analysis, and with the factor analysis we were able to then identify the main barriers and group them into the main categories of what is actually preventing residents. So this is the first part of the table, which I show you the main barriers that is preventing residents. And as you see there, the first three barriers are high initial purchase cost with a mean of 3.88. The second one is high maintenance cost with a mean of 3.78. And the third one is lack of solar panel providers with a mean of 3.76. The table, which I show you here on the slide, shows the least barriers that were ranked by the residents. And it's interesting to see that the last 5 barriers show that residents are not reluctant to innovation. They're aware of solar energy, electricity, of the impact of fossil fuels, of electricity generation systems, and they know what are solar panels. So to determine the barriers, then we did the ranking analysis. And basically what we did was to get all the barriers that are preventing them. We determined the mean, and then all the barriers that had a mean which was larger than the mean of the overall barriers were taken for further analysis. So these barriers I show you, there are 7 barriers. So the first one is the high initial purchase cost, and I show you there the high maintenance cost. And then finally, the last barrier is the lack of knowledge on alternative sources of electricity generation. So once we found the 7 barriers, then we perform a factor analysis. And with the factor analysis, we were able to determine 2 factors that will group these barriers into the main topics. So the first factor looked into barriers that pretty much were mostly related to incentive programs from the government and lack of technicians and maintenance support for the systems. The second factor was mostly related to financial support and the cost, both initial purchase cost and maintenance cost. So the first factor is the lack of government incentive and technology, and this one consists of 6 critical barriers, focusing on the lack of knowledge on incentives provided by the government and support to install and maintain solar panels. So this factor accounts for about 75% of the total barriers explained. And basically what we figure with this one is that there's a lack of experienced suppliers of solar panels as well as technicians for support and maintenance. So residents know that they don't have information about where to acquire the panels, how to maintain them. So this is preventing them from installing the solar energy systems. And the second factor is related to cost and financial support. And this consists of 4 critical barriers that are related to cost of installation, maintenance cost, and lack of financial support. So these factors account for about 19% of the total barriers explained. And we figure out that the cost is a main barrier because a lot of solar providers or the feed-in tariff don't have a long-term contract, so residents have to be constantly renewing their contract. And also the payment rate has been decreasing because as more people get into this system, then the government has to reduce their. So with this study, we identify the main barriers that are preventing residents from adopting these systems. About 90% of our residents in northern Malaysia support innovation and are aware of the environmental impacts of conventional electricity systems. So as Malaysia is moving towards sustainable development, an increase in renewable energy use with a whole life cycle perspective needs to start with policies at the local level. Policies need to communicate objectives clearly while accompanying that with cost incentives and financial support. And interestingly to see is that some of the results here could help to develop more targeted solutions into, for instance, household. What is the size of the household? So this could be considered for determining the capacity of the panels. And this added value is critical in lean thinking that can help users, suppliers, and the government to achieving efficient performance and increased value. So thanks very much. This is my contact information. Like I said, I'm in the Barda School of Construction and Project Management at UCL, and Narayan Ghazali is the quantity surveying at SDN in Malaysia. Thank you very much.